Hi friends, you're listening to the Shattered Ceilings podcast with your hosts Stephanie and Adriana. We're here to discuss the importance of mental health from the perspective of two first-generation immigrants. Join in weekly as we dive into important topics such as relationships, parenting, and cultural barriers. Here, we get real and candid as we explore what disrupting the status quo looks like for each of us.
Hey guys, welcome back to Shattered Ceilings podcast. We are your hosts, Stephanie
And Adriana.
And we're so glad to have you guys back with us today. We have an amazing episode in store for you guys with a lot of really good info that hopefully is going to be beneficial to you guys just like it was to us.
Yeah, and then before we start, we want to say a huge thank you for all the feedback, all the support. I feel like we only got positive.
So far, yeah.
Okay, so far. But yeah, we are so thankful that everyone was like reposting and sharing, especially since it was just our intro. It was very kind of basic and vague. So I'm excited for this one. If this was beneficial to you, please share it as well. And
for sure, the support was definitely overwhelmingly good, I should say.
Yeah.
And it just like proves to us that our Romanian community is very supportive. So thank you guys again.
Yeah, thank you. And sorry if I haven't gotten back. This weekend was a little busy.
You had a hectic weekend, didn't you?
3 birthdays this weekend
Girl,
in the family.
Look at you, party queen.
It was my mom's 50th birthday. We surprised her.
That's sweet.
Which she ended up finding out about the surprise.
She knew?
10 minutes before.
That's such a mom thing, I feel like.
And you know what she did?
What?
Because it was at my sister's house. She went through the backyard and opened the sliding door. And we're all like looking at the front door waiting for her. And we turn around and she's like, "You can't surprise me."
That's like, funny. Okay, I love it.
Very my mom. The other birthday was James, my husband. And then Julian, my little nephew. So January
birthdays.
Yeah. So thank you for whoever reached out to me. I'll probably get back to you guys today. But
yeah.
Very, very crazy weekend. How
was
your weekend?
It was good. I am sick. Sorry, guys, for all the sniffles you might hear today. This month was rough on us with the sicknesses. I don't know if you guys can relate to us.
It's winter.
I know. Yeah. I don't know if it's allergies, what it is. My son's in school, but it's probably what he's bringing home from school. So we've been sick. We've been, trying to get through this cold season for sure. And we just want to slide right into today's episode, guys. We have a lot to talk about. We have a lot to unpack together.
Yeah.
Mentally, emotionally. But it's going to be really good. It helped Adriana and I a lot, just going over the notes the last week. And I think that it's going to be helpful for you guys too. We entitled today's episode, Stuck Between Two Worlds, The Silent Struggles of First-Generation Americans. And that's definitely a mouthful, but we're going to try to break it down for you guys and hopefully make it applicable, practical for you guys. And I think that it's an important topic to discuss because, as we said, we're kind of trying to look at mental health from the perspective of first-generation Americans. And I think this is a great intro episode for that.
Yeah, I think everyone can definitely relate to this one.
For sure. At least to one thing they're going to relate. So if you guys are raised in an immigrant household like Adriana and I were, then you probably understand what I mean when I say that immigrant households tend to emphasize 3 things. And those 3 things are family, culture, and religious heritage. So that was definitely the case for me growing up. I don't know if it probably was the same for Adriana.
Oh, yeah, totally.
Yeah. So first came God/church. Church was a very big thing for us. Then family, and then definitely country. Both my parents were and still are very patriotic. My first language was Romanian. I don't know if yours was.
Oh, yeah. I didn't know English when I went to kindergarten.
Yeah, same. So. And that's probably like the consensus for a lot of us that are watching. And I love that. I'm so happy that my parents taught me Romanian. And that's actually something I passed down to my kids as well. My husband is Romanian. So for us, it was important that as much as we could help it, that their first language was Romanian. So those 3 things I think are very emphasized in immigrant households. And there can definitely be benefits to that, but you can see maybe that there are also negative effects to it when the increased expectations maybe that our parents have of us combined with a reluctance to address mental health I think that can set us up for an emotional struggle as adults.
Yes, in a struggle they probably don't understand, but we as a generation definitely understand.
Yes, definitely. So Adriana and I compiled a list of experiences that we think you guys as first generation Americans might relate to. So we're going to kind of go through the list, talk about our personal experiences related to each point, and just kind of hope that you guys can feel like relate to us in this sense. So the first thing on the list is culture clash. So what I mean when I say that is that you don't feel, in my case, I never felt 100% Romanian, and then I never felt 100% American.
Yes, agreed.
So for example, I vividly remember when I was younger, I would go to lunch at school, and sometimes I would get made fun of because my mom would pack me cabbage rolls.
Oh gosh, sarmale.
Yeah, Romanian cabbage rolls, sarmale, in my lunchbox. And then my friends would have like their PB&Js with like the crust cut off. Yeah. So that was like one thing where I felt like, man, like I kind of, I don't really fit in. But then we would go to Romania every summer and I would like get made fun of when I spoke Romanian.
Oh yeah.
Because I had an accent. So I wasn't 100% Romanian either. So that, can lead to later on in your life, maybe kind of having an identity crisis because you just feel like you don't fit into either culture.
Yeah, like you don't belong.
So that's definitely something that I think many of us immigrants deal with.
Yeah, I kind of want to piggyback on that, like having that two identities, and you're like, which one is me? And it's like you're both, and you kind of need to navigate on how that works for you in your life. I wanted to talk about the language because I think it's awesome that you're still teaching your kids Romanian, and here I am, like, I don't know Romanian. Like,
really?
Okay, I understand Romanian.
I didn't know.
I don't speak it. If I really have to, I can, but I choose not to because I would be made fun of, and I'm like, why am I doing this?
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
So it was tough growing up. I only knew Romanian. I went to school, and I remember, like, no one knew how to talk to me, and I was so scared. I remember going home, like, crying. I was like, I don't know English. Like, why did no one teach me English?
Yeah.
But no one around us was, like, no one was speaking English to us. So I remember being in elementary, we had ESL, it's like English as a second language.
Yep.
I was
always in that class.
Yeah, well, also being in Michigan, there were definitely more, like, kids with different ethnicities compared to, like, Arizona.
More diversity.
Yeah, definitely more diversity. So all the kids would go to recess, and then there was just, like, us and a few other kids who would not go to recess to learn English. And I remember being so pissed at my parents, like, why did I know English? Now looking back, I understand they barely knew English and they couldn't really pass it down. But after learning English, I was like, okay, I'm going to be the best at English. I don't want to speak Romanian.
Wow.
I was very like, I'm not going to practice Romanian. I need to practice English.
That's a good point. I never thought of that.
It's good, but now looking back, I'm like, dang it, I don't really speak Romanian well. I still understand, let's say, like, 90%. There's still words where I have to, like, ask my parents or, like, James, like, what does that mean? And then going to Romania, I went 3 times now. I thought I knew Romanian, and then I went to Romania, and I was like, oh, no, you guys talk way too fast. I don't understand.
Yeah.
And then that's when I'm like, oh, you're so American. I'm like, no, in America, I'm still, like, I feel super foreign sometimes. And I joke with people, too, saying, like, oh, sorry, English is not my first language. And I'm like, Romanian's not even my first language. So definitely still in that struggle. Right.
And I actually think that's a struggle for a lot of teens, for sure. Yeah. Because, like you said, you go to school and then, all your peers are speaking English. So you want to try to fit in with them. But then during the week, you're probably, very enmeshed in the Romanian community.
Yeah, the Romanian church, your parents, your grandparents.
And when you're younger, I don't really think that you know yet how to choose those certain parts for yourself of what culture, what cultural traits you want to keep for yourself. I think that comes maybe with age. I didn't speak the best Romanian either, honestly. And then I married my husband, and he spoke good Romanian because, he would go back every summer as a kid from Germany. So I kind of started speaking with him. Even now, I don't speak perfect Romanian, but I'm like, as long as my kids understand, and even if it's not perfect the way they speak, I don't care. I'm just happy that they can speak with their grandparents. So
they're bilingual, which is also important. I think it's cool that you can do that. So I'm sad that I didn't practice enough.
It's never too late, Adriana.
Yes and no. Another thing I think we both dealt with, or maybe just me, is growing up and missing a lot of events in my childhood and at school. Just because my dad was working a lot, and of course my mom was a stay-at-home mom with all the kids, or them not really understanding the culture at school. I was never allowed to go to like the dances or after school basketball games or soccer games. I wanted to be a cheerleader so bad. I wasn't allowed to. So it was tough. Or I had friends at school, but they would invite me to their birthday parties or sleepovers, and I would ask my parents, and they're like, no, we don't know them. Like, they're not Romanian. Which now, looking back, I'm older, it makes sense. But as a kid, you're just like, why am I an outcast? I would come, like, to school on Monday, and everyone's talking about the birthday party, and I'm like... And they would ask, like, why didn't you come? And I had no... I'm not going to say my parents didn't let me. Right. I was just like, oh, I was busy. Sorry. So it was a lot of kind of events growing up that made you more, I guess, sociable that I was left out of.
Missed out on, Another point that I actually read, summer camps. I didn't go to summer camps as a kid. Did you?
I didn't know that was a thing until I guess you get a little older.
Yeah, I like summer camps, or like you said, school dances, like prom or homecoming. Oh my goodness, like no way. My dad was like so like against it. Yep. So just because I feel like they didn't maybe understand, and that really leads us into our third point, that I think a lot of us maybe experienced teenage angst. And I mean that when I say that is basically that our parents did not understand our teen years, because when they were teens, at least for my parents, they were growing up under communism. So when they were teenagers, they really had to just kind of fight for their freedoms. Yeah. They were working from a very young age to basically provide for their families. So their teenage experience did not equal our teenage experience at all. So I think that they didn't understand a lot of things we went through in high school. And there's already a disconnect there when you're a teenager, just because you have like raging hormones, you have like all these social, things that you're going through. And then to have, your parents not understanding even more on top of that, because they grew up in a different country, in a different culture, under a different government, definitely kind of just complicates things, I guess I would say.
Which I get now, thinking my parents both came here when they were like 16 from Romania. And my dad, of course, had to work. And I don't even think he knew English. Obviously, they're in Romania. So he was just working, met my mom, got married at 18, and started having kids. And my dad was working 24/7. So...
What a different experience.
Yeah, it's also like, I can't relate to my dad. He came here at 16, not knowing English, making a business, my mom raising kids, and here at 16 to even 20, I'm hanging out with friends, shopping, listening to YouTube.
Yeah, literally. And then crying
that I can't go hang out or go after church and hang out with friends. And again, I understand that they can't understand where we're coming from, but at the same time, that wasn't an excuse, and we still had to deal with all those emotions that came with going through all that.
100%, I agree with you.
Yeah, another big thing that I think most Romanians deal with is feeling selfish for following our own dreams instead of pursuing the dreams that were set out for us. I know the biggest thing that we all hear at home is, I came here from Romania. I sacrificed all these things. Yep. And I totally understand. I could not imagine going through that. Like, I'll try thinking about it. And I'm like, I don't know how you guys dealt with all that trauma. And like, they really sacrificed their lives coming here.
Leaving everything. Yep.
So I am so thankful they did that. I could never repay them back. But in a sense, that's always kind of a sort of like thing that would make me feel guilty. Like, this is what they want for me, and if I don't do that, them coming to America was for no reason.
Right, their sacrifices.
Yeah. So I know I have a few people in my life, like family and friends, who, let's say their mom wanted to become a doctor or wanted to pursue a career, didn't have the resources or couldn't. So when they had kids, they were like, hey, you need to be a doctor, or you need to be a lawyer. You need to make a name for yourself because we came here for you. And unfortunately, a lot of kids don't want to do that, and they feel that guilty, kind of, I guess if they want to pursue their dreams, they feel bad because they know their parents don't want that for them, or it doesn't make enough money, or all these things that come with that. So I know that's definitely a struggle that people deal with, and that's kind of tough.
Right, and I think that definitely has to do with limited autonomy. I think that our parents see us as an extension of themselves, which honestly, being a parent myself, I don't know that I would be different. Honestly, because I'm thinking right now, like you said, how they sacrificed everything, literally their lives. Like my dad came here illegally, so he was like escaping his country in hopes of setting up a better future for his kids, for his family. And then it's like, you can't even go to college where I want you to go. Like,
this is it, I'm asking for you.
Yeah, so I do totally see their point, like I said, especially being a parent, but it's definitely, I think, an elephant in the room that a lot of teens deal with. And I think that being in America, we have so many opportunities that our parents might not understand, because maybe them, when they were growing up in their country, you know, for them, success would only come with an education.
Yeah.
But I think here in the States, having so many opportunities, like, you know, if you're a successful artist, if you're a successful musician, you know, you can do well for yourself. I think maybe they don't understand that. And at the same time, that we just have different priorities than our parents. I think that our parents prioritized or even thought of success equaling education or career. And I think that some of us see success as something different than what our parents would define it as, which really leads us into our next point, which I think this applies to all immigrant households, never being praised for academics. Success is expected. That was definitely the case for me. If I brought home an A, it was, why did I not bring home an A+? So that was always kind of like a back and forth, definitely with my mom. I remember looking back now, I see the benefit in that, because I think it instilled a work ethic in me that I have now as an adult. But then, you know, the negative part of that is perfectionism. That I have a hard time kind of just being happy with an end product unless it's perfect. So that's something that I recognize, and I try not to pass on down to my kids, because I think that that's very toxic, and it's a very difficult trait to have as an adult, just because you constantly go, you know, back and forth, you know, and trying to just struggle with perfection. So that's something I think a lot of us dealt with.
Yeah, I think being perfect or wanting to kind of comes along with like people pleasing.
Oh, 100%.
And that's a big one, because you, of course, want to make your parents happy, and then you want to make the church happy, and you just want to, of course, there's nothing wrong with being the best version of yourself, but putting yourself into this very little perfect box, and of course, we're human, we're going to make mistakes and fail, and then beating yourself about it. It's just, again, toxic. It's not good. And then it's easy to put that on your kids without wanting to. And then the cycle just keeps going.
Very good point.
Yeah. Another thing, I kind of laughed when I heard it. Parents complaining that we are becoming too American. I remember being like, I am American. And they're like, no, you're not. You're Romanian. I'm like, I was born here. So,
literally.
Again, I think it is taking the good out of the Romanian community. I'm never going to be fully Romanian or fully American, but we're in this culture. This is what's around us. It's hard to be that set apart. So I don't know if you have an experience about being too American in America.
So I don't know if you guys dealt with this, but when I kind of became a teenager and I would want to start going to like American churches with my friends, for my dad, it was like the end of the world. And he's probably going to look back at this and laugh, because I still ended up at a Romanian church with my kids.
Same.
But just like wanting to go and like experience like the genuine fear that he had that I was going to become too Americanized. And I feel for him, because I understand that fear of him coming to this country and wanting better for us and wanting us to take advantage of the opportunities we have here, but not wanting to lose his culture. Because I think it's very easy. All it takes is one generation to not practice traditions and to lose your culture. So I definitely see the genuine fear that he had, and I understand it. But at the same time, it does put a pressure on us to not, be too American, and that constant fear in your head that, am I being too American? Am I being too Romanian? And then again, that confusion of back and forth. And then really leading into our next point is the constant pressure, I think, that we feel that we need to accomplish big and great things. Adriana touched on this, constantly being reminded that our parents left everything in order for us to achieve something.
Yeah.
And I definitely think that applies to all of us, because I do understand, like I said, where our parents come from. I think that, many of our parents hustled for sure in this country.
Yeah.
And worked in order to get somewhere. I admire my dad so much for where he's gotten, and I think a lot of us admire our parents.
Oh, for sure. I don't know how my parents did it. I think about it. I'm like,
I know.
I don't know.
I don't either. That's for sure. But I think that also translates into, okay, so they sacrificed and left everything that they knew. They left their family, their friends, their country, their language to come to a completely foreign and unknown place.
Yeah.
So what I do in my future is really going to be the backbone of their well-being. And I need to make them proud. I need to do something so great that what they sacrificed is basically worth it.
Yeah.
So I think that's definitely a pressure that we face. And that leads a lot into hustle mentality, which me and Adriana want to talk about because later on in an episode, because I think that it's definitely an issue in immigrant communities. I think that we don't know how to turn ourselves off.
Yeah.
I think that,
always working.
Yeah, always working, constantly going, constantly hustling, trying to prove ourselves, not only to ourselves and our community, but also to our parents.
Yeah.
So I think that that's definitely something that we may all struggle with.
Yeah, I love everything that you said. Another thing that I guess that I dealt in my household, especially in the beginning, it was like 4 girls. So my parents had to deal with food and like 4 teenage girls. So our thing was, my parents were really big on just get married, find a good Romanian husband who's working, stay home, have kids, and that's kind of your life set up for you. Which, again, I have nothing against that lifestyle. I know a lot of family and friends who have that, and props to all the moms who are stay-at-home moms. I think that's like the hardest job in the world.
Yeah.
But I think it's tough when you're 16, 17, 18, trying to figure out, all your peers are trying to figure out what college you're going to, what their degree is. And here I am like, oh, I'm gonna stay home and get married.
I need to get married.
Yeah, that wasn't really the norm, at least at school. Of course, at church, it was pretty similar, but my parents weren't really big on education, especially with the girls. So I remember wanting to go to college, and my parents were so confused.
That's a good point. I never saw that perspective.
Yeah,
so
that was at
that.
my house. Yeah, they're like, why do you want to go to college? I'm like, well, everyone's going. I don't know. What if I want to do a career or just do something for myself? And not that they weren't supportive, but in the beginning, I think they were confused, especially since my other sisters were like wanting to go to school, but wanting to get married. And then I was third in line where I was like, no, I want to own a business. I want to get educated. And I was like that because I saw my dad own a business. So I was like, you're the reason why I want to do this. And it was just a very, I think, big misunderstanding. But of course, they supported me. I went to school. I got my career, and I'm so happy I did that. But I think, like we were kind of talking about, your parents putting that pressure. If you're grown up in a household where they just want you to get married at a young age, have kids, I think it does take some courage and boldness to be like, hey, that's not really for me, at least as of right now.
For sure.
Now I'm older, and I'm like, I can't wait to be a stay-at-home mom and stay with my kids and like raise a family. But I'm also going to be 28 this year.
Right.
So if I never went to college or pursued any of my hobbies, I would have been like, 10 years just not doing nothing, but really sense. Doing nothing, just staying at home.
And I think that it's really important that you shared your perspective, because that's the point. It looks different for everyone. Even for me, my dad's like biggest dream was for me to go to college.
Yeah.
He like worked his tail off to pay off my school, and then I got married at 21. So, which was so great because he loved and he still loves my husband so much. So I know that he's happy that I made that choice, but I know that he always had, like, in the back of his mind, the disappointment that I never finished my school.
Yeah.
And I'm laughing because last year I decided to go back to school, but not for what I initially wanted, which was nursing, psychology, which try to explain that to my dad, like why I'm doing that.
You're like, that's not a career.
Yeah, but he doesn't care. He's just happy that I went back to school, and he's like so excited to attend my graduation in 2 months. Like so it's like it's different for everybody. Like I did the married and kids, and then I did school. So it's like the timeline is truly different, and the journey is different for every person, and that's totally okay. That's actually the beauty of it, is that it looks different for everyone. Because if we all had the same stories, like what would be the point?
Yeah, totally agree with that. And I think, again, it's a learning curve for our parents to understand where we're coming from, and then for us to also understand our parents and kind of meet in the middle, or just respect both ends and be supportive.
Right. So I agree with you.
It's definitely funny to kind of hear other stories of people going to school because their parents forced them to, and then they stopped doing what they were doing, and now they own a business, or now they're doing something else that's still bringing income, but it's not like the doctor income and the lawyer income and all these really amazing careers, but it's not what your parents were expecting, but you're still doing something. So.
And I really think, even if our parents might not admit it, I think they're the most proud when we're happy. Like, if you see, really, like, because truly now as a mom, like, if my kid is happy, whether it's because he's like a farmer or like whatever, like, if he is happy and he's content in his life, what more can you ask for as a parent? And I really think that's really, you know, what our parents feel as well. Yeah. Even if they wouldn't admit it.
Yeah, they definitely want the best for us.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think this is our last kind of point that we talked about, was gender-based double standards.
Oh my goodness.
The treatment of daughters tend to be more protective, strict, and controlling. I can relate to this because, like I said, a big family, a lot of daughters, and then sons, and just kind of seeing the dynamic of how my parents treated us. And I always joke with them too, like, you were way more strict than us, than our brothers. And they're like, no, we weren't. I'm like, yes, you were. Like, it's okay to admit that. Yeah. Which we were talking earlier, too. I get it. When you have a daughter, you are more protective. It's a girl. You just want to make sure she's okay in this big, crazy world. But it's still funny to see when I went out, my parents wanted to know who I was with, where I was going. I needed to be home at a certain time. I remember going out, especially after church with all the Romanians, and it's a huge table. By the time you get your food and the bill comes, it's late. And I remember my parents being like, you need to come home, it's 9:00. And I'm like, I didn't even get my food yet. And he was like, well, pay the bill and go. And I remember having to do that and going home. And then my parents were like, okay, good night. And I like went in my room, and I was like, that was so lame. I didn't even have fun, but I had to come home. And now I go to my parents' house, my brothers come home later, and my parents don't ask any questions, and they're off to bed. So it's funny. I do laugh about it, but definitely think growing up, girls had a different standard
for sure
of what was kind of expected of us compared to the guys.
Definitely. So. And that definitely even plays into what you said regarding women being expected to marry, have kids. I think that in all immigrant communities, women are not expected to have a voice, really. I don't know how to say that in a nice way, but they're kind of just expected to conform, I think, quicker than a man. I think in all cultures, that's just the case. Like women,
not just Romanians.
All cultures, truly. If you look in, worldwide, women are expected to just conform to the standards of society. And there is a beauty in being a woman, for sure. I think that it's so special, and nothing can beat being a woman, making a house a home, being with your kids and taking care of them. But I don't want to raise my daughter to not be able to stand up for herself, to not be able to have a voice, or to speak out against things that are wrong. And I think that sometimes that's kind of like looked down upon in a lot of immigrant communities. So that
might be an episode in itself.
For sure it will be. So kind of now that we've gone over this list, and I don't know if you guys have related to one point, maybe to all points, but we don't want to stop there. We want to kind of dive into the psychology behind why our parents reacted the way they did, why these ideologies are present in immigrant cultures. And I want to share a very interesting theory with you guys. I want to talk about, Adriana, you're familiar with Maslow's hierarchy.
Yes.
Yeah. So for those of you who are not, Abraham Maslow was an American psychologist who created Maslow's hierarchy of needs in 1943. And it is basically it's an idea and a theory that relates to human development. So he created a pyramid, and it has 5 levels. And the idea is that throughout a human being's life, in order to ascend to the next level of the pyramid, they need to have the first pyramid secured. So the pyramid has 5 levels, like I said. The bottom is physiological needs, which are food, water, warmth, rest. And in order to ascend to the second pyramid, that first pyramid needs to be met in your life. So you need to know that you have food, water, shelter, and then you can ascend to the second level, which is related to security, safety. After those 2 levels have been met, you ascend to the third, which is belongingness and love. And that is associated with relationships in your life, friendships, and that's kind of what we call the emotional level. Those 3 have been met. You go on to the 4th one, which is esteem needs, and it is relating to a human being feeling accomplishment in what they're doing in their life. And the point of Maslow's theory is that at the end of a human being's life, they should be able to ascend to the 5th or to the top of the pyramid, which is self-actualization. And it is associated with a human being achieving their full potential in life. So the theory that I read and I found in my research regarding immigrant communities, I found it to be very interesting. And it is talking about how when our immigrant parents arrive in a new country, their struggle really revolves around meeting those basic needs for themselves and their family. So basically the first and the second level of the pyramid. They work extremely hard. I think that's the case in basically all of our immigrant parents. They deny themselves comfort to put basically food on the table and a roof over our heads, which we've all heard. I think I put this roof over your head, and it's really true, really and truly. And in trying to secure these foundational needs for survival, the problem occurs when there's a blockage, and their emotional needs, or the third level, then becomes a low priority because they are basically hustling to provide physically and safety and security for their family. So all of their hard work and their sacrifices that they made were needed to secure that bottom and the second level. And in doing so, sometimes they're not able to ascend to the third level of that pyramid, belongingness, which is related to emotional needs. So then we have the problem where our parents covered that important level of basic needs for us, so we don't need to worry about that. Then we in turn have the ability to grow and to be able to strive for that 4th and 5th level, self-actualization and self-awareness. But since they themselves could not satisfy that level of emotional needs, the lack of emotional fulfillment will then translate into their parenting style, which I think is where we see a lot of that disconnect. We then are not maybe understood by them emotionally. Also, I think it has a lot to do with maybe they themselves as children were not understood emotionally. Like I said, our parents grew up under communist times, which was an extremely difficult period of history. And I think that their parents, honestly, maybe did not have the ability to recognize the emotional needs of their children.
Everything was controlled by fear.
Right. Definitely. That's a good point. Yeah. And so I think that because they maybe did not have their emotional needs met, then they have a hard time in turn understanding us. So when you really take that step and go back in time like that, it's easy to understand and see why they relate to things the way that they do. And then sometimes certain immigrant parents might even experience depressive symptoms, for example, but they probably are not aware enough to realize their mental health struggles, or maybe they don't even want to admit it.
Yeah, I kind of wanted to say something.
Go ahead.
Quick. Not that it's off topic, it's about like the whole depression thing. I don't know if you know that Italian comedian. His name's like Sebastian. Well, he was talking about his parents being Italian and like immigrants, and kind of like him telling his dad he's depressed. And then he pretty much was like, my dad was like, I've been depressed my whole life. Like, get over it kind of thing. So it's like, they might be depressed and are aware of it, but they're kind of just like, this is it. This is my life. So when I like heard that, that's what I thought of, because not that they're like one step ahead, like how can I get better? How can I get out of this depression? They're just kind of stuck in that, and they think this is life. Yeah, this is what life gave them, and this is what they're going to deal with. So.
Right. And it's funny, but it's also like really real to think of it like that.
It's very sad to think about that too.
For sure. And then a lot of times I think they also teach what they've been taught. So like I said, if they grew up with their parents suppressing, those emotional needs for them, they might just replicate what they saw. They a lot of times won't make a bridge towards a solution. Like you said, they'll just kind of accept it, for what it is. This is the point sometimes where a lot of immigrant parents may develop unhealthy coping habits. The first one that I can think of that I think is very prevalent is overworking. Yeah. I think that they just get in this routine because that's all they knew since coming here. Yeah. And it's easier to just overwork, spend your time instead of taking a minute to pause and just look at your surroundings and deal with what's in front of you. Yeah. So I think overworking, maybe sometimes in very extreme circumstances, maybe drinking or drugs might be their unhealthy coping habit. A lot of times they repress things emotionally and they move on without healing. And when I say that, what I am referring to is sweeping things under the rug. Yeah, that's a big one. Yeah, that's a big one for sure in immigrant communities. That is really the way that they react to the mental health struggles that they're going through. And then a lot of times also positive traits of that certain culture are emphasized while the negative traits are just swept under the rug. Yeah. And then you have somebody that comes in and tries to talk about it and they're just shut down or looked down. Yeah, looked down upon. So those are just kind of some ways that we can maybe just look at the bigger picture. And kind of understand where our parents are coming from, what background immigrant parents may have surfaced from. And I kind of just want to end this episode on a positive note. And there are 3 things kind of that I thought of that might be helpful and beneficial that I've applied in my life that have really helped me, and I think might be helpful to you guys too. So number 1, I want you guys to know that it's okay to pave your own path, even if it looks different from your parents' expectations. Yeah. Like I said, for me, it might not have been my dad's, dream for me to get married right away. Although, like I said, he's very happy and he was supportive and happy at that time as well. Maybe it's not what he had dreamt of me to do, or maybe it wasn't in his timeline, but it was what worked for me. And it was what, most importantly, God wanted for my life and my future. Yeah. So know that that's okay. And then secondly, we can choose for ourselves what parts of our culture we want to keep and pass forward to our children. I'm very thankful for the values that my parents instilled in me. Like I said, my husband and I love the Romanian culture very much. We love the food, the language. So we try to pass, a lot of those things down to our kids. But we can also at the same time choose what negative parts we would like to leave behind. Yeah. So that is really important for us to notice and realize that the future of, our family is up to us and, what works for us. And the answer is really going to look different for every person and every circumstance. And then thirdly, honesty and communication with our parents is extremely important. But at the same time, we want to be compassionate. Yeah. I truly think that our parents desire to have that kind of close relationship with us where we can open up to them about things, even if they don't know how to initiate that. Yeah. But I really think that if we start with honesty and communication and compassion, most importantly, that can be the first step in just healing maybe a lot of hurt from our past. One thing I want to mention is I truly believe that our generation is a generation of cycle breakers. I see us realizing a lot of toxic things that we don't want to take forward with us into our futures. And that can be really difficult sometimes. It's very important for us to admit it's difficult to break those cycles when you don't have parents maybe that are holding themselves accountable or saying, hey, you know, I should not have done this or I should have done this.
Yeah, so I love what you said about being compassionate with their struggles. I think it's really easy to be the victim and put all the blame on your parents and end right there. But I realized, especially through therapy, to have compassion, realize where your parents came from, and kind of meet in the middle. I know when I had those conversations with my parents, I started realizing, well, my grandparents didn't say I love you to my parents. They weren't big huggers. So how awkward would it be for my parents to do that to us? So that's how we grew up. But since that lacked in my family, I'm like, I can't wait to hug my kids and say I love them. And maybe I'll overdo it because I didn't get that growing up. So I think that's really important to kind of have compassion, see where your parents came from. They're doing their best, just how we're going to do our best as parents. I'm sure our kids will grow up and be like, you guys didn't do this. And it's, again, you can only get better. So I think that's super important to be honest, have that communication with your parents, but also have, I guess, an open ear and more of a positive outlook. So with that being said, every week we're going to have a little challenge for you guys. I guess the challenge of this week is to pick one of the points we discussed and bring it up with your parents. Remember to listen with compassion and an open ear. The discussion should hopefully end with a resolution. Yeah, we're not trying to make you fight with your parents. We want there to be a positive resolution. Or just at least to see eye to eye. Maybe you'll still disagree, but just to kind of have that communication. And I was kind of thinking about this just because it took me a while to even talk to my parents about things I was dealing with. If you don't feel comfortable talking to your parents yet, maybe go talk to a friend, a family member, or just talk to someone about it. I feel like conversations definitely help kind of any healing that you have inside, and
for sure
not have that resentment towards your parents if that's what you're dealing with right now.
The first step is definitely having the conversation. The first step is noticing, you know, that you want to make a change, and then having the conversation is super important, like you said, Adriana. So just to wrap up today's episode, guys, we just want to say thank you so much for being here with us. Thank you for listening. We hope that this episode was beneficial for you guys. If you have any feedback about the episode, go ahead and join our private Facebook group. We also have all of our subscriptions, and our social media handles will be linked down below. And we have a link tree in our Instagram bio where we have an anonymous suggestion box. We want you guys to be able to offer suggestions for episodes or feedback or insight. You can do that anonymously. We want you guys to feel comfortable to do that. So like I said, that is in our link tree, which is in our Instagram bio. Once again, thank you for being here with us, guys. We can't wait to see you back next week on another episode of Shattered Ceilings Podcast.